Okay, I wanted to show how this this knife vise right now is, the blade is basically parallel with the floor, right? But I want to, my butt, I got a curvature in my butt. That sounds like a personal problem, doesn't it? But the butt of the handle comes up in the air, which is a little too high for me. This is just an example of how nice this the pipe vise is. I loosen the pipe vise and just pull her down, and I'm right at a comfortable working place. I'm not working up like this. I can rotate this thing down, and I can view this knife continually from any perspective that's necessary for me to do my job. And my job is to do as good a job as I can. That's my job. So I kind of, Jerry Reyes always taught me, he said, you know, he's an old Marine, and he just said, stack the deck in your favor. Always stack the deck in your favor. So I try to do the things that make sense to make it easier for me to do a better job. And this pipe vise and this thing as a combination do that real well. They help me do a better job. Or they help me, you know, I'm not saying I'm any good, I just tried to equip myself with equipment that helped me do the best that I can. Okay, at this point, about 90% of my handle material, unwanted handle material, is now laying on the floor between my feet. You can see we've got this thing pretty well dialed in. I have my handle material is almost down flush with my spacer and my butt cap. So, but remember, I left those real big. Now I've got file marks here where I've chewed into my spacer, and on all the way around I've hit my butt cap here, and that's fine. I don't care because they're big. I left it big for a reason. But now that I'm done with the cabinet maker's rasp, but I'm just kind of down to a smooth tooth, you know, and I'm smoothing things out. What I'm going to do is take it apart and then go back into my grinder, and I'm going to probably use like a, you know, A300 Gator, and I'm going to dial in these fittings down to basically their final dimension, just short of finish work. And I'll leave it at that A300 Gator, which is like a 180 or something like that, because I'm still going to hit it with even the smooth file, but the damage will be minimal. It'll just be superficial scratches. It'll come out real easy. But I'm going to dial in the final dimension of these fittings. Which reminds me, before I go anywhere, before I even do that, it's time to get these are still just sitting here friction fit. They're not pinned into place. So I'm just gonna make a little reference mark. I can make sure I get these right back where they're supposed to be. That's gonna go right there, right? That goes there. This handle won't actually turn up there. There's not much danger up here because they're fitted to the tang. But this butt cap will freely rotate, so I'm going to make a couple reference marks to get those lined back up, and I'm going to get these pinned so that they're always where they're going to be. Okay, here's something I also wanted to point out. I took this in and I kind of cleaned it up. I cleaned the profile up and reduced it some. Now here's something I want to point out. Because I'm working on these parts individually, I hope I can do this with two hands. There we go. I'm basically 290 thousandths on that side. And what am I over here? 290 thousandths. This spacer is perfectly centered left and right on the knife. If I file my handle to it and I do the same thing on the butt cap, then my knife is a no-brainer. It's dead center. It's dead center on the knife. because of using this thing and doing my lines and working on these individually. If I make my hardware and then shape the handle, if I make the hardware and get it dialed in within 1/1000th of center on the blade, and then I shape my handle to the hardware, right, it can't not be where it's supposed to be. So there's a reason to my madness here. I'll say a couple things real quick about alignment pins. Here, I wonder if I can. A lot of people, everybody uses all kinds of different stuff. I buy 5/8. I buy 5/8 inch long, 16th inch diameter stainless dowel pins. Buy them by the 100. And when this is something I missed on the first video that my camera wasn't recording, but I use a dial indicator on the, let me get that light out of there. It hits up on the bottom of my, I do this all over the place, drill presses, on my mills. I use them on my lathes. And when you put it against a piece of stationary part of the machine that moves, and as you move, you get to see how many thousandths you're traveling, you know, so you can get it right to the thousandth. So these, for example, this pin is in the spacer 200 thousandths, and it's in the handle 425 thousandths, so that's 5/8. And that way you can move the pins around from one hole to the other, and it doesn't make any difference. They're all exactly the same depth. Now here on the butt end, I'm going to pin the wherever the guard went, or if the guard went. But see, I can't really go 200 thousandths deep into the butt cap, because how thick is it? It's 210 thousandths. So I'll probably just go like 125 thousandths into the butt cap, and then I'll go 500 thousandths into the handle material, and that'll be 625 thousandths. So the pin, any pin can get used in any hole. And that's another thought about using dial indicator when you're drilling holes or turning something on a lathe. Anytime you're moving something, put it against the part of the machine that moves, and then you'll see how far you went that way. Okay, another tip. I've been tweaking things along here and there and getting closer on this and closer on that, and going back and forth to my gadget over yonder, and putting new lines on and grinding them down and getting things centered up and so forth. And anyway, it's just tedium at this point. Pretty soon things will get dialed in, and but you can see how things are centering up, and there's some guidelines to do some more filing to, and so forth. And anyway, it's just a bunch of work. Knife making gets pretty slow sometimes, but that's where we're at. I'm about to go get a haircut, but I wanted everybody to kind of get an idea of what this walnut is going to look like. I hope things. Ooh, that's it. See what's going on with that walnut? Isn't that extraordinary? This is going to be a kick-ass Cowboy Bowie. Sometimes walnut is just off the chart. Beautiful. And these fittings, of course, are going to be black, hot blued black. And you remember what the blade was going to look like, but this handle material right here just needed to be on this knife. So anyway, you kind of get an idea of where things are and how things are getting dialed in and sorted out. I'm down to hand sanding now, and things should start being pretty well in line. And I'm looking at my monitor upside down, and you know how that goes. Maybe I got to thinking, I'm going to say this in here, I got to thinking earlier, God, that's beautiful. Sometimes it gets so slow going, and I think about people and they say, I want to come to your shop sometime and watch you work. And I think, dude, if you want to come to my shop and watch me work, then you either don't have a life or you should go get some counseling or something, because I mean, sometimes it just goes, it's tedium. Unless, of course, it's a friend, and you enjoy talking to each other and you can do stuff like that. But somebody just wants to come to like learn knife making or something, have no idea how slow and tedious this stuff can be sometimes. I know this looks kind of ugly right now, but since the last time I saw you, or you saw me, I can't see anybody from here. I had the knife handle completely shaped where it needs to be. My fittings are now where they're not going to change dimension anymore. It's just going to be cosmetics on the surfaces. So all my dimensions are dialed in. What I did was, I had this thing and it's completely shaped. Its dimensions aren't going to change anymore. What I did was sand it with I would take a dab of Danish oil, and of course it was assembled and it was on my knife vise. But I just take a dab of Danish oil and some 220 grit, and I would sand that. This is what I did last night. I sanded that, and as I did so, it would create a slurry of real fine walnut particles and the Danish oil. And I'd rub that, I'd sand that and sand that, and it would rub into any of the pores in the wood. And I did that over the entire surface, gradually taking that slurry and filling all of the microscopic sort of little pores. And there were a couple cracks. There's a knot here that I can't even see it now, but it was an actual, there it is. Let's see if we can, there's a knot right there that was a long crack, but it's filled with the walnut dust and the Danish oil, and it's hardened and dried overnight. So now I'm going to come right back at this with a 400, and I'll have an incredibly smooth surface. And if you really want a super slick surface, you go ahead and do it again with the 400 grit and let that dry overnight. And anyway, that's what I did with that, and I'll be doing a 400 sand on this, and we'll see how things look in a little bit. If in that previous segment I did not give credit to that little sanding slurry process to my buddy Brian T, I certainly meant to. I don't see enough credit given when people learn something from others and give the guy they learn it from an attaboy. So I just don't see enough of that. So this is, that was a 220 when I showed it before, and I took this I sanded 400 and 800, and this is just going to be some rockin' walnut. I hope you guys can get an idea. And it's really nice, and it's nice and smooth and has a nice luster to it. Just a beautiful piece of walnut, which, by the way, I got from Steve Rose on Facebook. He sells some quality material, and he doesn't appear to be out to rob you of your hard-earned money. He gives a pretty decent price most of the time. So anyway, thanks, Steve. This is a rocking piece of walnut I got from you, buddy. Anyway, knife's turning out pretty slick. Isn't that something? God, I could just... Beautiful walnut. Alright, moving on. Okay, I'm getting my fittings finished and getting them ready for hot bluing. And this is something I've done for a very long time, and I really like doing it. Of course, this is my butt cap. What I do is I hate, mirror polished fittings unless there's a really specific reason for the whole thing to be mirror polished, and I find those reasons rare. But what I like, there's some tape marks on here and fingerprints, but it's pretty well cleaned up. This is a satin, there's tape goo. This is a satin finished edge on the knife, as well as a satin finished surface on the butt cap. But I knocked the corner out off and did a mirror polish on just the edge. So now when you're walking down the aisle of a knife show and you glance over the knife and you see this guard or butt cap hardware that's all mirror polished, quite honestly, all you see is something that's, in fact, it's just a shiny blob. But light, as you walk along and you see this butt cap, see how the light just kind of dances off that corner? It looks like a jewel, and it catches your eye. So anyway, it's just a mirror polished facet, and it gives the steel I think a more attractive appearance. Anyway, I'll do the same thing to the guard.